Our election officials at the state and local levels should be free to do their jobs without fear, without intimidation, without attacks. These attempts to subvert the democratic process are simply disgraceful.
The governor of Pennsylvania there talking about the president and his cronies like Rudy Giuliani.
While all of you thought there was some kind of legitimate count going on here in Philadelphia, it was totally illegitimate. So we went back to court, and we went before a Democrat judge. No need to tell you what the result in Philadelphia is if you're before a Democrat judge. Obviously a political hack who doesn't know the meaning of the word observe.
As usual, Rudy not just unhinged, but what he's saying completely, and I mean completely, untrue. In the meantime, the Trump campaign, they've got a few legal battles of their own with Pennsylvania. They've sued over observing the ballot, saying Republicans weren't allowed to watch the count. That's completely not true. It also sued to stop ballots from being counted. And the president, he wants the Supreme Court to now get involved. Let's bring in our next guest to discuss the legal battles, plus the state of the Democratic Party as it's likely to fail to get control of the Senate and more. Ed Rendell, former head of the DNC and also one-time governor of Pennsylvania, mayor, and also DA of Philadelphia. Hey, Governor, I just spoke to Senator Casey. He says, like you, he's in touch with the Biden camp. They're really comfortable Biden's going to win and win by a comfortable margin. You've seen nothing today that tells you different, right?
No, in fact, I'm pretty sure that the vice president is going to win by 70, 80, 90,000 votes.
You heard what Rudy said. You heard what the president's been tweeting today. You know, some just chalk it up to sore loser, but a lot of others say this is really dangerous. We've had fights in this country before, but we've had peaceful transitions of power. Do you think there's a lot of bluster? Are you concerned where the next week, 2 weeks could go if the president won't accept the results?
I'm not at all concerned about them going to court. They have every right to go to court, but they're going to lose in court because they lack one thing: evidence. All they're doing is making baseless charges that have no foundation in evidence. But I'm afraid that the president, for the last 3 weeks, has been setting this tone that the election is going to be stolen from him. And some of his more naive followers are going to believe that. And I think there is a propensity for possible trouble.
Okay, so let's say this ends and Biden is the next president and he's going to inherit obviously a lot on his plate in the middle of a pandemic and obviously a recession, if not worse. But he's not going to have a Democratic Senate the way a lot of us thought he was going to. Rather than what the Democrats got wrong here, the question is, if I go back, if I remember right, it was you and Biden who talked Arlen Specter into joining the Democratic Party late in his career. Is there a way to govern and get a lot of stuff done with a Mitch McConnell as the Senate Majority Leader if there's a razor-thin majority for Republicans in the Senate?
Well, I think there is. I think Joe Biden's one of his greatest skills, and why I was so supportive of him being our next president was because he has the ability to reach across the aisle. Now, can he persuade a politician like McConnell to cooperate and do things that are in the interest of the country? Maybe not. But he can go to individual Republican senators, Ben Sasse, Mitt Romney, maybe Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and talk to them and incorporate some of their ideas into his programs. And if he does that, I think he can get legislation through that passes. And, you don't have to pass with 70 votes. 60 votes in the Senate is all you need, and I think he can get that. I think he can get that regardless of what the map looks like, because he'll know how to deal with the Republicans. He'll know how to incorporate some of their good ideas into his programs. He'll know when to stand firm. But I think he'll be able to hammer out some compromises. I know it's not the same, but I never had a Democratic legislature when I was governor, and I got a lot done. But before I announced a program, I'd bring the Republican leaders in, and I'd ask them to look at it and tell me what their ideas were. And when they came up with good ideas, I added them to the program.
In trying to understand why more Democrats didn't do better, not just in the Senate, but the House too, and some of the states, you look to non-educated white voters, and they stayed with this president. Getting ready for this interview, I saw once you did a piece where you said, we're becoming a nation of wussies after an Eagles game had gotten rained out. And I mean this as a compliment. You were a guy who sat in the cheap seats at Veterans Stadium to watch an Eagles game, and you could handle yourself there. I'm looking at a lot of Democrats, smart guys and women, but I'm not so sure the steelworker can relate to them. Does the party have to start thinking about relatability? I mean, I don't think Trump's a tough guy, but they looked at him and thought he was a tough guy because he talked that way. Does, in terms of the type of candidates the Democrats put out there and their messaging, does it have to be a little coarser? What do you think?
It's interesting. The average blue-collar worker, whether he's white or black, it doesn't really matter. The things that we stand for as a party are much, much better for them personally than the things the Republicans or Donald Trump stands for. And yet they supported Donald Trump. We do a lousy job of delivering our economic message to them. That's number one. Number two, yes, too many of those people look at us and say, well, they're a party of minorities, they're a party of effete interests, they're a party of elitists, etc. And we're a conglomerate. We're a party of all those things and more, and it's what I think makes us the best party possible. But we're not transmitting the idea that we care about working class voters. We do. The best thing I did in all my time as governor, and we were able to accomplish a lot, was raising the Pennsylvania minimum wage. When I signed that bill, I was giving people who earned $10,000 a year a $4,000 a year raise. And that was a terrific feeling. And that boosted the wages of everyone in Pennsylvania, not just minimum wage workers. So we do care about average workers, and we do, but we're doing a lousy job transmitting that message.
You know, I want to say this carefully, but when I saw some of the exit polls, Latinos obviously didn't break in the numbers than a lot of people thought. And we mentioned already the non-college educated white voters, and even on the African-American population, overwhelmingly for Biden, but some thought the number would be even bigger. I was surprised at how many ads were running, even in congressional races where they were showing the rioting. And I said, what does this have to do with anything? But was there a mistake in calculation? When some of the protests turned into something other than a protest, we saw this in Seattle and in Portland, that Democrats were paralyzed because they didn't want to criticize when it became something more than a protest, it became social unrest, and they let a vacuum exist there where they got defined by it?
No, I think that the protests and the atmosphere that they created and all the violence hurt Joe Biden and hurt the Democrats. There's no question in my mind. Probably the most effective message that Donald Trump delivered was that you're not safe. Of course, it was a bogus message because who's president? Donald Trump. This is happening on Donald Trump's watch. So how could the Democrats make it very much worse if they took power? But it was an effective message, and we didn't spend enough time rebuking it. Joe Biden, very good ad when he said, look, burning property isn't protesting. Throwing bricks isn't protesting. Looting stores isn't protesting. We should have run that ad over and over and over again, because that's what I think helped Donald Trump get a much higher percentage of the vote than anybody thought he was going to get. And give Donald Trump his due. He's a very good marketer. He knows how to deliver a message to ordinary people. It's not a proper message. It's not a truthful message, but he can deliver it and he can stir people up. And that's why he won this election.
Finally, you've known Biden forever. For those at least I've talked to that know him, they say, listen, he's a better, as good as a candidate is, he's a better person as a legislator, and they think he'll be a better president. Is he the right person at the time, given all the challenges we got ahead of us?
Yeah, I think he's the right president. You just hit it on the head. For this time, for what the country needs, he's the right president. He's going to bring the country together. He's going to heal. He's going to go to red states if there are tragedies. He's going to go to red states to announce programs. He's going to give plenty of aid to red states. He's not going to design a tax bill that punishes red states or anything like that. He means what he says. Right now, America needs a lot more goodness, and Joe Biden is a very, very good man.
Ed Rendell, Governor, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, up next, we're expecting to hear from the president. We'll be taking you to the White House in the briefing room. When that happens, we'll have much more about that. And also, we'll talk about what this election has taught us about where we are as a country and also about our fellow Americans. We'll get into that as well. Stay with us, everyone.